De'Aaron Fox is back. He drops 30 points. Kings go into Brooklyn, get a necessary win. And it didn't look pretty the entire time. They weren't totally awake in the first half, but they come out, they turn it up in the second half, and that's all you can really ask. Just come away with the wins against teams that you should win against, and I don't really care how you get there. During the first half, no, I wasn't super happy watching that type of basketball. But I can accept that it's not always going to be the prettiest as long as you come away with the win in the end. And it was really nice to see Fox actually carrying our offense after his major struggles. He wasn't even listed on the injury report. So that tells you that there's really no thought of sitting him out even for a game or two at this point. And he comes in and really carries the offense for the first 3 quarters. Because the Kings weren't great offensively in this game. They weren't knocking down their threes. They weren't knocking down their free throws. But I don't think offense was really the problem. I think the problem with the way the Kings came out in this game in the first quarter and then in the first half was on the defensive side of the ball. Even though the Nets didn't put up some crazy amount of points, they put up 54 in the first half. That's not crazy. And the Kings only scored 22 points in the first quarter, 25 in the second. That's so low for this Kings team. But I do think that it was the defense that was the problem. Because coming into a game against Brooklyn, you shouldn't really have to knock down your threes. You shouldn't have to be perfect offensively. You can beat this team through your defense. Because it's not like this Nets team was even really knocking down a whole bunch of shots. They weren't really making their threes. In fact, some of their misses were so bad. So bad that they got a lot of offensive rebounds off them. But I just don't think the Kings really came out with the right energy. And, I've just been saying this so much, but I have to keep saying it. I don't believe in this starting lineup because they don't come out with the right energy defensively a lot of the time. I think this was one of those games where DeMar, he isn't getting in there and getting rebounds. He isn't closing out to the perimeter. You have Monk who's getting driven by too easily. And the Kings just weren't being disruptive. And I mean, that's really how you beat this Nets team is you get super disruptive because their only ball handler is D'Angelo Russell. And so it was disappointing to see D'Lo just come out, get a quick, easy 4 points, just taking screens, snaking around them, throwing an alley-oop pass up to Claxton. We had Fox on Russell to start with, and then Keegan got switched on, and he immediately gets back cut. It's just disappointing. I think the team defense was disappointing guarding D'Angelo Russell because he's the one guy you want to key in on. And so they started out playing in some drop defense, and they changed up the coverage. They started blitzing him, and he was getting the ball out of his hands quickly, and the rotations just weren't there. You had Monk coming out and fouling a three-point shooter, and Fox later in the game would foul another three-point shooter. I mean, it's insane how many three-point shot fouls the Kings give up. And, I mean, these were both 4-point play fouls. But, I mean, early on, the Kings were still outscoring the Nets. And that's what you can expect from the Kings. And obviously, this starting lineup, they were outscoring them. Fox knocking down 2 threes, getting to the rim as well. Coming out with a quick 10 points. And you saw some nice moments of Sabonis and Monk pushing the basketball and pushing the pace. But I then think you saw a little bit of a drop off. And Monk's defense, like I said, I thought he wasn't closing out correctly. He was just getting blown by. And then he started getting super careless with the ball. He had 4 turnovers in the first quarter alone, and he ended with 4 turnovers, so he cleaned it up. But then Fox went out of the game, right? And you have a lineup of Malik Monk, Keon Ellis, Doug McDermott in place of Kevin Huerter, who got a DNP, which is very interesting, Trey Lyles, and Domantas Sabonis. And that unit offensively, they were moving the ball. They were driving and kicking. That's great, but at some point, someone's got to shoot the ball. Felt like there was a lot of hesitation. I mean, they were passing up good shots to get bad shots or turnovers. And then on the other end, the Nets were just getting into the paint too easily. And Alex Len came into the game to try to give us a paint presence once Domas came out. But he wasn't really a paint presence. He wasn't able to disrupt what the Nets were doing inside. I think the Nets ended this quarter on something like a 14-0 run. Len immediately came in, got scored on by a guard, turned the ball over. Then he went into drop coverage, but then also kind of went out to contest the shot. And then he allowed an offensive rebound. So Alex Len was bad. And that's definitely something we need to point out. Like, do I think he should be playing? No. But also, he wasn't the main problem. This started before he came into the game. I think the kind of low effort defensively started before he came into the game. But then just when Domas goes out of the game, then all of a sudden you're not outscoring the Nets anymore. And so now that lack of defense shows even more because not only are they catching up because you're not putting points on the board because your spacing is bad, but also you're turning the ball over and you're giving them easy layups. And so they're catching up even quicker now. So all I really want is a starting lineup that is able to set the tone defensively better. And whether that comes in trading for someone and having them start or just starting Keon Ellis, I do think a change will need to happen at some point here. The second quarter was a little better, but the Kings were just still allowing the Nets to get to the paint too easily. But on top of that, they were fouling a ton. The Nets had a ton of free throws in that first half. Not a ton in the second half, but they ended the game with 30 free throw attempts to the Kings 17. Now, do I think the officiating was bad in the second quarter? Yes. But I do think most of the Nets' free throw attempts were earned. It was just that the Kings probably should have been getting more themselves. So I think from a defensive standpoint, the Kings weren't doing a good job of being physical and keeping the Nets out of the paint and disrupting them. But then also when they got into the paint, they didn't make them prove it inside. Like this is a Nets team where you can let them kind of go up around the rim. Maybe not D'Angelo Russell so much, but anyone else on their roster, I'm not really worried. Like, just go straight up, try to get in front of them, go straight up, and live with what happens. But instead, you had a lot of guards getting down low and trying to swipe at balls and committing fouls or trying to take charges or just trying to do too much instead of just being slightly disruptive and living with the results. And so they weren't forcing the Nets to beat them. They were just giving them free throws. And later on in the fourth quarter, when they did just let them try to finish, we saw the finishing is not good for the Nets. But there was a lineup that got it going a little bit. Fox was really the only guy creating offense early on, although Lyles did have a nice offensive rebound and putback. But Fox, he was the only guy that was really trying to get inside early on there. And somehow he wasn't getting to the free throw line. 0 free throw lines in the last 2 games, and then 0 free throw attempts in the first half of this game. But the Kings got something going a little bit with a lineup of Devin Carter, Malik Monk, DeMar, Keegan, and Sabonis. And I really liked what this lineup did, and especially Devin Carter. He didn't play a ton of minutes in this game, but he played 10, and that's more than he's been playing in the past. And when you look at the plus minus of the bench, it's Lyles minus 18, Doug McDermott minus 10, Alex Len minus 14, Devin Carter plus 8, Keon Ellis plus 4. So that matches the eye test because the defense picked up when Devin Carter got into the game. And the Nets were hovering around a 10-point lead and the Kings would cut it to 8, but they couldn't really make any big headway because the offense, they weren't knocking down their threes, but more so they weren't getting multiple stops in a row. And Devin Carter was the guy. It felt like the Kings needed a defensive play to get out in transition and kind of swing momentum. And that's kind of what he did. It wasn't necessarily a transition moment, but it was Devin Carter hustling on the offensive end to pick up a loose ball, get it to Sabonis. He gets the layup. That got with the Kings within 6, I think it was. And that just felt like the spark that the Kings needed. And the defense picked up, and that just led to easy looks in transition because you had Keegan taking it in transition and going strong to the rim for a dunk. And that was something he did multiple times this game, going to the rim strong. You had Sabonis getting out and getting a transition layup. Then DeMar and Domas both got to the free throw line finally after the Kings had been trying to get there for a while. And so the Kings got back into the game, but then they let up a little bit. And I do think this was a little bit when the officiating got in the way. The end of the kind of second half of the second quarter was when the officiating got a little bit funky. But the Kings did themselves no favors. DeMar, there was one play where Devin Carter's guarding a guy that drives into the paint, forces a kick out to DeMar's man who was kind of coming in and helping, and DeMar just pushes Devin Carter out to go contest his man. He's like, you guard both of these guys. So DeMar just wasn't feeling it today, playing defense, and Monk as well. And those two guys are kind of the barometers. When they look like they're playing defense, when they look like they're locked in, then the Kings defense usually does very good things. And when they don't and when they're getting exposed, that's when the Kings aren't doing such good things. And some of it has to do with them, but a lot of it, especially when it comes to DeMar and like not closing out on shooters or Malik and getting driven by it, a lot of it just comes from other guys' activity and kind of making up for them and being in the right places to help and making the right rotations so that the Kings aren't just playing one-on-one defense. And that's why I think the Kings have looked better in a zone, especially with this starting unit, because you're playing more team defense. It's less chasing around the perimeter. But you had Keegan picking up a third foul, and it was kind of reckless, him just trying to go out and trap a guy near half court. There was one play where the Nets have a guy injured. They're playing 4-on-5 offensively, and Monk just lets his guy by and then fouls him. Then you had the Fox fouling a 3-point shooter, 4-point play. And in all this, we have Doug McDermott in the game down the stretch because Keegan got into foul trouble, which was just an odd decision. And then I think Monk's defense was so bad that they threw Trey Lyles in there as well to try to give us some size. But what that did is just now we have no perimeter defense because we have Fox and then Doug McDermott, DeMar DeRozan, Trey Lyles, and Domantas Sabonis. Not great, that's a moment where you probably need Keon or Devin Carter in those moments. But I think what it showed is that the small, scrappy lineups that the Kings threw out there were better than the ones where they just tried to throw out some unathletic size. Like Doug McDermott, he's a garbage time king. Like he can't seem to make a positive impact when he gets in there. Feels like he's always hitting the threes in garbage time and never when he gets meaningful minutes. I think when you had Devin Carter in there, when you were utilizing Fox's and Monk's speed, and of course Keon Ellis, like I would have loved to see Devin Carter and Keon Ellis out there together, and Fox for that matter, and just put out a full small lineup that's just running around the perimeter and trying to cause chaos. And so while it felt like at one point in that second quarter, I mean, the Kings did get back into it. It felt like they were playing better. The officiating towards the end of the second quarter probably made the score look worse than it should have been, but at the same time, like you just should have come out with the requisite energy to start the game, and this really wouldn't have happened. We were getting toasted by a guy whose name I can't even pronounce, Tosan Ivbuwan. I don't know how to say his name. I've seen him around a little bit, but he was just getting inside at will, really using his size to go against smaller Kings players like Malik Monk or even Keon Ellis and finish at the rim. But being within 7 when a lot of things haven't gone your way. Like, okay, we're still in 7. It should be an easy second half. Like, I wasn't really worried. When I got a little worried was when they came out in the third quarter and immediately committed 3 fouls when they had already been in the penalty early in the second quarter, when foul trouble was a problem. Keegan and Domas were in foul trouble, and they immediately come out and they commit those 3 fouls. The Fox one just reaching across the body on D'Angelo Russell, like that just shouldn't be something he's doing. I know he's trying to be disruptive, but you have to do it in a disciplined way. So that foul was bad. I don't know what the Domas foul was because it happened so quickly on an inbounds that they hadn't even cut back to the game. And then you had Keegan, D'Lo getting Keegan on his back and drawing a foul. And that was Keegan's 4th foul, I think. And so immediately the Nets getting in the Kings into foul trouble was very worrying. So Keegan went out with 4 fouls. Keon came in. Kings adjusted to try to blitz D'Angelo Russell so he couldn't get guys on his back and play with them that way with Claxton as a lob threat. But, I mean, I think he did a good job, D'Lo did, of getting the ball out of his hands quickly, and the Nets were swinging the ball around. But the rotations just weren't there from the Kings. But things really turned around when the Kings went to a zone defense. And that has been a common theme for the Kings under Doug Christie. Any zone defense the Kings throw out there has been pretty successful. They came out and they just allowed Fox and Monk and Keon to fly around the perimeter because with Keegan out, you're lacking size bringing Keon in there. So you go to this zone to really try to disrupt things, and they were getting deflections and getting steals, and it led to the Kings playing faster. They got a couple of Monk dunks, and he had a drive and he kicked out to Fox, who hit a 3, and he was the only one hitting 3s for the Kings. DeMar came in, knocked down his second long 2 of the game. Of course, he goes 0 for 1 for 3 and 2 for 2 with his foot on the line. Just every time. But he does it because he like jumps so far forward into his shot to get momentum going into his shot. I'm never really mad at it just because that's who he is, you know. That's just who he is. So I'm not mad at it. You know, maybe if it were a younger player, I would be like, he really needs to work on that. With DeMar though, no, I mean, he doesn't need to work on that. He does what he does. He can score. And then a miracle happened. A miracle, a miracle, a miracle in the middle of that third quarter. De'Aaron Fox shot a free throw. I know, it's insane. And one, got to the line for the first time in 3 games. Then, next possession, got to the free throw line again. Then later, gets another and one. So, I guess the floodgates have been broken. He went 4 for 4 from the free throw line. He hasn't missed in a very long time from the free throw line. When he gets there, obviously some of that has to do with him just not getting there the last 2 games at all. But even before that, he had been knocking down a bunch of free throws. But the offense in that third quarter just looked more like the offense that we're used to from the Kings. But I think a lot of that just comes from the defense, from getting steals, from forcing misses, and just getting out in transition. And that allows the Kings to really flow offensively. So many times, Kings offense just comes from Sabonis grabbing a rebound, him pushing it up the floor, kicking out to Monk, and then just diving down into the paint. Monk drives, Sabonis Gortat screens his guy out of the way, and Monk finishes at the rim. That's one of my favorite things about the Kings offense, is just watching Sabonis go down low and knowing exactly what's going to happen, because Monk sees it every time, drives to whatever side Sabonis is on, and gets a free layup every time. There were still a couple of bad things going on in that third quarter. Rebounding being one of them. The Kings allowed 17 offensive rebounds. They got 11 themselves. They ended up winning the overall rebounding battle. Some of them were just the Nets like airballing or hitting it so hard off the backboard, or throwing an alley-oop pass that goes off the backboard that I think counts as a shot and then goes right to a Nets player. So some of it was that, but Day'Ron Sharpe was definitely causing some problems in there. He got 8 offensive rebounds. And there was just one where Sabonis is boxing Day'Ron Sharpe out, and DeRozan's in that corner that he's boxing him out to. DeRozan could just get in there and grab the ball over Sharpe as Sabonis boxes him out, but he just doesn't. I mean, Sabonis was doing all he could on the boards. He had 16 defensive rebounds and 22 total, but it was the other guys. DeMar had 2. Keegan had 2. Fox had 1. Those are defensive rebounds. And Monk had 6, which is good, but I mean, even like Alex Len in 5 minutes had 0 defensive rebounds. So that, along with the Kings not being able to hit a 3 other than De'Aaron Fox, and there was just that one really weird sequence where I don't know what happened, just a sloppy turnover at half court from the Kings, miscommunication, I don't know what it was. Jalen Wilson goes the other way for the open dunk, misses it. Then just a couple of weird possessions back and forth, and then Fox finally hits a 3 to go up 6. And so that was kind of a nice play to give the Kings some much needed breathing room where it could have gone the other way, but it didn't. So it's kind of a momentum play. And then finally, Keon Ellis hits a 3. So someone other than Fox hit a 3. Fox took over in that third quarter. He scored, I think, 16 of his 30 points in that third quarter. But when he wasn't making something happen, I feel like the Kings kind of started overthinking. I mean, there was a ton of overthinking this game when Fox would go out, when he wasn't on the ball. Earlier in the game, in the first half especially, but even in the second half, you had Sabonis passing up a shot and then just throwing it out of bounds near 2 Kings players. And then even on the defensive end, I think there were just some times where the Kings just needed to keep it simple. Like Devin Carter's trying to draw a charge. That in and of itself is not a bad thing. He gets called for the block. Oh well, he's kind of been failing at getting charge calls a couple times, but it's not really that particular thing, that particular play, but it's more just a lot of the Kings guards when they were inside were not keeping it simple. They were trying to make something happen. They were trying to force a turnover. And that just meant a lot of fouling, meant a lot of free throws instead of just trying to stay in front. They were playing defense with their hands and not their chest. It happened at the end of like the last possession of this third quarter where Fox fouled someone driving to the rim with like 2 seconds left. And luckily he missed both free throws. And that was right after Sabonis also missed 2 free throws. But it was just you're not making a bad offensive team prove it. And in the fourth quarter, that changed. I feel like Fox, he carried us through the first half and the third quarter. DeMar offensively also good in the first half. But the start of the fourth quarter, when Sabonis was out, when everyone was out except for Fox, it was Keon Ellis time. It was Keon Ellis and Keegan Murray, but mainly Keon Ellis. He got a steal that led to a Keegan Murray drive. And Keegan in transition just looked like he knew exactly what he wanted to do with it. And so that's good to see, right? He just drove straight to the rim, had a nice finish. Then Keon has a nice contest, forces an air ball. It might have been blocked. I don't know. And it leads to another Keegan take where he just puts his shoulder into a guy and then finishes with a nice floater. And so we've been seeing Keegan be much better in terms of finishing inside, because early in the season, I think we saw him just kind of trying to barrel his way inside, but he wasn't very good at it. Like he was lowering his shoulder, but then he just kept it lowered for too long, and then he would throw up a prayer at the rim or just try to draw a foul. Whereas this play, which is more what we've been seeing lately, is him put his shoulder into a guy, but then pull out of it. Once you've made that impact, once he's flying backwards a bit, then he pulls out of it and goes to the floater more in control than what we've seen before, or than what we saw earlier this season. I think he's getting better at it lately. And so that was a great way to start the fourth quarter, because the start of fourth quarters can be bad. And we saw exactly why it was huge, because the next two possessions are just god awful. Like no movement. They hit Fox. He gives it to Keegan. Keegan just kind of tries to ISO and then give it back to Fox, and then nothing's happening. Next possession, come down, just throw it to Lyles. He tries to post out from like the 3-point line and turns it over. And I think DeMar was actually in the game at this point, but it was just like DeMar standing in the corner. Fox, they're just doubling him. And so the Nets just forced Keegan and Lyles to make things happen off the dribble. And actually, they didn't even really force Lyles. He just for some reason wanted to. But that's why those defensive plays were important, because the offense in those groups is just not good. And we don't see the synergy from those groups. And so right away, it's like, Sabonis, you're back in. And he played 41 minutes. The Kings need a backup for Sabonis so badly that can just eat a few minutes. But Keon, he just continued to make a difference defensively. He got a steal in the backcourt when the Kings were only up 1. And then he goes to the corner and hits a 3. Then he got another block on a 3-point shot. And then on that same possession, the Nets airball another one and get both offensive rebounds and end up scoring. There was a few possessions like that in the fourth quarter. Not too much you can do about that. But what the Kings zone was doing in that fourth quarter was they were letting certain guys get the ball on the wing. Like they were letting Jalen Wilson get the ball. They were letting Tyrese Martin get the ball, and some other guys as well. And say DeMar is in the corner. He kind of helps over and takes away the 3-point shot, but he doesn't take away the driving lane. The Kings just bait them into driving right into Sabonis and dare them to finish. And don't foul them. That's the big part. Don't foul them. Make these guys beat you off the dribble offensively. And that's what the Kings started doing, and it was super effective. The finishing wasn't there from the Nets. Overall, the Nets shot 36.5% from the field, almost 28% from 3. But they shot 86% from the free throw line and made 26 free throws. So when the Kings actually made them beat the defense, the Nets couldn't score. And then in closing time, Malik Monk, he was having a tough game. Turned the ball over a lot early on. Was sloppy. Wasn't good defensively. But he came out in that fourth quarter, and him and Sabonis just ended the game with the 2-man game, really. Monk had some nice takes to the rim around Sabonis' screens. Sabonis was getting some nice putbacks. And then Monk had a nice feed to Keegan in the corner for a 3 that put the Kings up 12 and was the capper to an 11-0 run. And that was with 6 minutes to go. And then, out of a timeout, the Kings forced 2 shot clock violations out of 3 possessions with their zone defense. not letting the Nets get into anything. And the Nets did a good job of trying to respond defensively because like Fox would walk the ball up the court, kill 8 seconds, but then they would hit him. He would get the ball out of his hands and not much was really happening and it was late shot clock. But then guess what? The ball just finds its way to Sabonis. Sabonis catches on the perimeter. And we've seen him hit a very good percentage of threes this season, being able to catch with a ton of time, just set himself up and shoot the three. This was one that I expected him to miss and miss badly, to be honest, because usually when it's like quick catch and shoot, either a contest is there or it's late shot clock, which is the case here. Usually it's not good, but this time he catches it. I don't totally want to call it a no dip three, but like that's kind of what it was. Like he kept it up, shot it quickly, and just drained it. So, and he has been shooting with closer contests recently, and he just continues to shoot really well from three. Then you had the classic Claxton flagrant. He leads the league in ejections, and it's always like just tackling someone inside. So you got the flagrant one. And then Keon, thank you to Keon for getting Sabonis his triple-double with a nice cut and then with a nice three off a DHO. So Keon gives Sabonis the insane 21, 22, 10 triple-double. Almost, no, not almost. He had 6 turnovers, trying to get that quadruple-double. Some other things from this game. The Kings looked like they were getting injured out there. Sabonis took a big fall, but he seemed to be okay. But he was like grabbing his shoulder or his elbow or something. Fox got hit in the face, including the eye, multiple times. So that's not great. But they seemed okay. And Fox, I mean, it's just nice to see Fox have this type of shooting game. But really, it was nice to see him be able to get inside and get to the foul line at least a few times. He got 3 foul calls inside. But for him to have an efficient night where he's 30 points, 7 assists, 0 turnovers, that's huge. So him coming out of his struggle and hopefully he can string together some good games here. Also, another interesting thing, like Malik Monk, every time that I'm like, Malik Monk doesn't seem like he's really having a good game. And then it comes to the end of the game and he's 8 for 15 from the field. He has 16 points. He has 9 assists. 6 rebounds. Yeah, he has 4 turnovers, but he's a team high plus 30. He comes out in the fourth quarter and just puts the game away with his 2-man game with Sabonis. And I feel like there's been a little bit of this narrative with Malik Monk in his career, and even lately it like persists, of him kind of being a high ceiling, low floor player, of him being a guy that sometimes he's an all-star level player, sometimes he's not. But I don't know. I don't really think that's the case at all. Like, I think he has a pretty high floor, especially this season. I feel like he's shown when he's given starter minutes, and now I am advocating for him to probably go back to the bench for Keon for other reasons. But when he is given starter minutes, even in his bad games, where he's not playing so well, he's still able to put up stats and still able to make a positive impact. He went 0 for 6 from 3 this game, only missed 1 shot inside. Almost still got a double-double. Had 4 turnovers in the first quarter. No turnovers in the next 3 quarters. So despite some struggles, still a good game from Monk. Keegan, foul trouble for him, so he only played 24 minutes. Just didn't get a lot of shots in the first half. Not many opportunities, but in the second half he got some more opportunities. Looked good finishing in transition. Hit a big 3 in the fourth quarter to cap a Kings run. Just wasn't his best game. But definitely not his worst game either. That foul trouble just kind of disrupted things for him. DeRozan played 37 minutes, went 7 for 11 from the field, super efficient for 17 points. Didn't do a whole lot else. I would have liked to see him get more involved in the offense towards the end of the third quarter, towards the start of the fourth quarter. Didn't seem like he was super like energetic this game. He wasn't given everything defensively. He wasn't super involved offensively. But I will say it is nice to see him be able to go 7 for 11, including, like, he didn't hit any threes, but he hit 2 toe on the line threes. And yes, that's 2 less points than if he actually would have hit those threes. But the spacing is what's really important. So him being able to step out and hit those long shots and take them with confidence is huge. For him to be able to kind of play within the offense and not be the focal point and still go 7 for 11 is big and be efficient. And then you have Sabonis. It was kind of a slow start for him, and he had 6 turnovers. But 21 points, 22 rebounds, 10 assists for him. 4 for 8 from the line. An off shooting night from the free throw line, but 8 for 10 from the field. 1 for 1 from the 3-point line. I mean, he's just such a beast. I don't know what else to say. It'll be a shame if he misses a second straight All-Star game when he's had the two best seasons of his career in these last two seasons. That would just be a real shame. That's all I'm saying. Off the bench, you got Keon, 3 for 6 from 3 for 11 points, 3 steals, 2 blocks. That's insane. Carried the team defensively in that fourth quarter and hit some big shots when no one else could hit from deep. Played 30 minutes, mainly because of the foul trouble from Keegan Murray, but also because you have no minutes from Kevin Huerter and fewer minutes from Alex Len, and not even a whole bunch of Trey Lyles minutes. Trey Lyles played 15 minutes, went 2 for 3, missed 2 free throws, of course. 4 points, 5 rebounds, a block, a steal. He was good going after it on the boards. Other than that, just kind of a quiet game from him. That one possession where he tried to back that guy down in the post and then just threw the ball away was interesting. Devin Carter, 10 minutes, and I thought he came in and made a real positive impact. The offensive game is still not quite there. He just doesn't get a lot of attempts from 3, and I think a lot of that is his release. He went 0 for 1. But it's the hustle. It was the ball pressure. There's one play where he just pressed up on a guy. It was towards the end of one of the quarters. I think, was it the second, the third? I can't remember. Where he just pressed a guy and made him dribble the ball out of bounds, earning the Kings another possession, stopping the Nets from having a possession. He made key hustle plays, brought the ball pressure and energy that the other guys really were lacking. And then the last two guys, Doug McDermott, 0 for 4, 0 for 2 from 3, just not good. And then Alex Len, a turnover, got one offensive rebound on a tap out. Like he hasn't been able to make the same impact as a rim protector this season as he has in the past, or as a rebounder. He just really shouldn't play. And so I really think you have, with the roster as is, I think you have your 8-man rotation, which is Keon Ellis, Trey Lyles, and Devin Carter off the bench. I think that has to be it. And the other guys are more break glass in case of emergency. And obviously during the regular season, you don't want to run an 8-man. You want that 9th, the 10th guys. But that's just not how the Kings' depth has performed this season. But the Kings now go into Philadelphia, and they're going to be on the second night of a back-to-back because they're playing the Lakers. I don't know who's playing. Like, with teams like this, it's always so hard because it's like, I don't know who's playing. Maxey will play, I'm sure, but like Embiid, Paul George, Drummond, Caleb Martin, Gershon Yabusele, KJ Martin, like they could all not play, right? But really, the Kings just need to be able to start games better. They just dig themselves these double-digit deficits every game, it seems like. They need to come out much better on the defensive end and have that lead to offense. And I would love a starting lineup change, but I don't think that's going to happen unless the Kings start losing a bunch of games. Like I don't know. I don't see that happening because it's not like a guy is playing bad in the starting lineup, so you bench him. It's like a fit thing. Yeah, it's tough to say, hey, Malik, I know you're playing the best basketball of your career, but we're starting Keon Ellis. Like, I know that's tough, but I really do think it's the right decision. Get Monk all of the minutes that you can off the bench, but I just think starting games with a correctly balanced lineup is the right play so you don't dig yourselves into these holes. And, early on in this game when the Kings starting lineup was in against Brooklyn, they had like an 8-point lead. They didn't dig themselves a hole in the starting lineup. But I think you're just better balanced when you have the defensive Keon in the starting lineup and the offensive Monk coming off the bench. So anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back on Wednesday to recap that game against the Philadelphia 76ers. So I will see you guys then. Peace.